on the side of God's endless love. You're all familiar with this story, but there are actually two levels of conversion for Zacchaeus in this gospel. It is true that at that time, tax collectors were perceived as the most low of the low, the most reviled of the reviled. They were seen, and more likely than not actually were, crooks and traitors, because they served the Roman Empire that was oppressing the people at that time, and they were known for taking a very big cut from the taxes. So Zacchaeus was one loathed individual. But his conversion began because he had this longing to simply catch a glimpse of Jesus. And that began his first step of conversion, that step of conversion against the bad, harmful, destructive ways that we can all be tempted with to varying degrees. He stopped caring how he was perceived. He did not care how reviled he was and how people wanted him to just go away or how ridiculous he looked climbing up that tree. At that moment, God began working on his heart to recognize the message of the first reading. That when we truly recognize that the entire universe comfortably fits into the palm of God's hands, we begin to have that sharper perception such that we don't care about what people may think of us. We don't care about anything but wanting to see and experience more and more of that love. And Zacchaeus just wanted a brief glimpse, but he was given so much more. He was given what was recognized as the greatest honor anybody in that time could receive. That honor of having Jesus enter into your house. And that opened the floodgates for the second level of his conversion, because he recognized he did not deserve to see Jesus. He did not deserve to have Jesus enter into his house, but he got it. He saw how much he was loved and cherished and delighted in spite of his sinfulness. I can imagine Jesus looking up at that tree with that smile that convicted him to his heart. And that is why it wasn't just about Jesus entering into Zacchaeus' home. It was crystal clear that Jesus had entered Zacchaeus' heart. And that's why he was on fire to declare that not only was he done with his destructive, sinful ways of the past, but that he was on fire to do anything and everything he could possibly think of to show how grateful he was for this undeserved love, this undeserved delight from being chosen by God as God chose each one of us. And as if that day was not great enough for him, because he welcomed Jesus into his heart, Jesus was able to give him the most supreme honor, to say, "You are saved." Salvation has come to this child of Abraham, which was that way of saying to this child of God. The next event in Luke's Gospel after this encounter with Zacchaeus was the Passion of Jesus, the supreme gesture of God's love for each of us, all as the beloved child of God. And the second reading asks, how can we possibly be shaken or intimidated or scared or feared? How could we have anything slow us down when we recognize just how endless the love of God is? the depths of evil are endless. There is no more subtlety with evil. And so many candidates of evil are openly pledging to destroy whatever's left of what's true, good, pure, and beautiful. It's up to you to go to these people that have yet to be convinced of this reality. And the way you convince them is to get them to recognize that this is about what's best for the children. What's not best for the children is the current satanic cult of child sacrifice. That if the child, through some miracle, survives the threats of abortion, they find themselves entering a world where they are bombarded with this ruthless grooming into making them want to cut off their purpose, cut off their identity, cut off their families, cut off their gender. We must do everything we can to keep our children safe, to stop the assaults that they are facing like never before in time. And that requires this joyful zeal of Zacchaeus, where we too will do whatever it takes to save these children, to open the eyes of everyone to that endless love of God. I could go on for hours and hours with specific proofs that this strategy will work. And it must work in this time where we are facing an election between good and evil. The trajectory of evil is eternal death. The trajectory of good is eternal life. And with the perception, the zeal, the joy of Zacchaeus, we will turn things around.